This is a battle between good and evil. It's quite clear. There are evil forces which do not have the best interests of the human race at heart, if they have hearts, have access to vast amounts of fake money, which will work for a time, and they can use it to further their interests and their well-being and so on, but ultimately will dissolve and dissipate and do nothing but destruction on the way. And against them are people who, in general, have nothing to gain from opposing them other than their lives and their freedoms. And that's the real acid test. They have everything to lose because they can lose their freedom. They are now threatened with imprisonment for even speaking and so on. They, have lost their livelihoods. They've been cancelled. Doctors, for example. The war, we realise now, was going on for a long time. It's a battle for the essence of the human being, which we call the spirit, which is that part of the human being which is total. It's a portal into the infinite and the eternal, so that we become totally ourselves, totally upward looking, totally motivated and fixated on the horizon, moving through time and space. Always moving through. This is the thing of the human being, that we are not designed to settle, to stop. And each thing that we think, which becomes the object of our desire, is doomed to disappoint us. Whether that be a drug or a person or whatever, a job or money or anything, a house, a car. All these things momentarily appear to be the answer, and then they become the opposite of the answer in a way. And that movement through seems to be how we are designed. And that it is only in that way that we optimally function as human beings in this dimension. What's going on now is a war against that understanding. We are being reduced even more than we had been to simply consumers, to simply blobs of flesh and bone moving around a piece of earth. That our function is purely economic. We have nothing to offer other than to keep the mechanism of the enrichment of the rich functioning. Never before in, I think, human history has it been so blatantly proposed to the human race that this is the sole function that we have. We're already being told that we won't be needed in the future to produce, that we will only be needed to consume. And we can only consume on certain very particular limited conditions with a central bank digital currency which can be controlled and programmed. So we will only be able to consume food, even necessities, if we behave ourselves in this new dispensation.
I think all war is a spiritual war. We are spiritual beings. This disconnect from spirituality and physical reality is just it's kind of a Western phenomenon. They'd laugh at you, like in Western Africa, if you said, I'm not a spiritual person. They were like, what are you? Like flesh and bone, I've been so long spiritual, I can't even relate to that mentality that doesn't believe in a grand design or a creation story, I see evidence in my own life every day, but everyone has to find their own evidence.
I felt that there was a sort of a divine war being declared upon us. And I'm not given to that kind of language normally. As soon as I said that to myself, it was that sensation you instantly get inside of you, that good feeling. It gave me relief. When you know what kind of warfare is being declared upon you, and then you know how to defend yourself from it. Before that, it's just anxiety and hypertension. And incompetence plays a huge part in this as well. It's almost like the dark forces behind it are using the most incompetent politicians and bureaucrats to make this happen. I was getting 2,000-3,000 people listening to my vlogs. Before that, as soon as I mentioned it's a spiritual warfare, overnight the vlogs went to 10 to 15,000. So it definitely hit people. They heard something that they had been thinking themselves too, quietly.
The corruptibility of the world was a given all the time. The extent to which it wasn't yet totally corrupted was to do with waiting on the part of certain powers that are still in the shadows to a high degree, but who have now made themselves visible in all kinds of indirect ways to us. And it is clear that their intentions do not really include the happiness of the human race. Do they necessarily include the existence of the vast majority of the human race? This is a different version of good and evil than anything we've ever understood before. This is a totalitarian, totalizing notion of evil in our midst. A thing that we never imagined was possible. We realised that actually this is a fight to the finish. They've shown their hand. Now they have everything to lose by losing. They can't afford to just say, okay, just having a laugh, as you were. That's not going to happen. So it's to the finish. This is about as dark as it possibly could get, where we are now. We need to summon up our spiritual energies and to stop being reticent about them, to expand our concept of what it means. What is the spiritual dimension of man? And to really start to exercise those muscles again. Because ultimately that's what they're trying to extinguish.
These people are extremely sinister. I mean, this is why we have Russell Brand on Newsnight about 8 or 9 years ago saying we want spiritual socialism and distribution of wealth. Overnight he goes from being this ridiculous character to a guru for idiots, and they all fall for it. We have to watch every move they make. And they have all kinds of traps set up for us in everything. They themselves don't experience life the way we do. They don't have this inner richness. You can see that even in the local politicians in Ireland. You couldn't have a conversation with him or her. There's an absence of personality. They're not fully integrated in a personality level. You have in Jungian psychology the concept of individuation, where you go through your life, you make all the mistakes. And by the time you reach your crone or senex, at the end of your life, you're individuated. You put all that behind you and find that it has a meaning. Well, they're never individuated because they never go through life and have that one reflective moment. This is why the media is full of these people, where they say, has this all happened for a reason? No, because everything follows a protocol, everything follows a plan. So because they don't individuate, they've decided that the human condition and species as a whole shouldn't be allowed to individuate. Most of them have been born into affluence and money. They've never had to struggle for anything. And if they did come from a middle-class background or whatever, you would find that they were picked because they were not intelligent enough to think. This has always been noticed. Right back to the time of Plato's The Republic, there was a belief that, an educated poor person is a dangerous person. That was somebody you had to watch, big time.
There's levels, There's people at the front who are just foot soldiers, and maybe they have no concept of a spiritual war. Maybe they just know that their enemy is the man in front of them and he's outside 5 kilometres in the middle of a lockdown. And that guard just knows that that man is breaking that law. And that guard doesn't know what's behind that. The fella who wrote it, he mightn't know either. Take another step back and there's a fella who knows that to control the movements of people is a great boon in the control of people and of nations. And to inhibit people's movement is to inhibit their freedom and their self-determination. And behind him again, black magicians. Black magicians. Maybe there's black magicians. This war is raging and it's an insidious war and it's invisible. And it's very serious. It feels like the good are getting better and the bad are getting worse. The madness around us, this war that's going on, is getting dirtier and dirtier. There's more and more casualties, more toxicity, more poisoning, more deaths. While that's happening simultaneously, how Coggerigor do, that whisper is rising. And that whisper is the prayer for change, coming from the 4 corners of Ireland, all different. From the east, it's weaker, but it's all about debt and mortgage and she's trying to escape. And from the west, an old fisherman who just wants his livelihood back. People are revolting because their circumstances become so unbearable. And that prayer is meeting and gathering, and in Pieder Lehain God, they now implore with one voice. So if everybody wants change for all different reasons from the 4 corners, different calls for change are coming, or calls of resistance and revolution. And that gathers as one voice. It's heard, the whisper is heard. That's what this film is about, is to show how awful it is. And also how amazing it is.
Never, ever underestimate anything you do or say. Or even if there's one person listening, one gesture could have been the greatest thing in your whole life without you ever knowing that it was, because it might have moved that person in a way that you can't dream of, and that person may have then moved hundreds or thousands of others. That is the spiritual dimension that we're in. It's exciting, it's magical. People call it other names. They call it randomness, chance, or coincidence. You know, well, I say no. Coincidence is a miracle in which God chooses to remain anonymous. We see lots of those if we actually are willing to see them.
It's a great tool. If you recognise the innocence in every man, you can awaken that innocence in him, you know. And that's what's given to us as spiritual beings, humans. Like, we're very developed spiritually, humans. We know our way out of it. We feel it inside ourselves, don't we? Like, we know we've got the edge. Because if the same spark is in all of us, then we can all relate. And it's hard to talk about the spiritual stuff without sounding like a bit of a wanker. Because there's a lot of spiritual wankery out there as well. Like, that battle between good and evil, which is in the world and which is in Ireland, very starkly, is in ourselves. They say the great external battle is only a mirror of what's internal in us anyway. Most of my peers would be winning. They're getting better. Other people are getting worse. And I'm leaving go of them. And actually I find I can't even be in the same room as them anymore, God bless them, but I can't. That dissonance will happen. And there'll be simultaneous realities. And the two realities will be so dissonant that we probably won't encounter each other too much. And that if we come across Gardaí Síochána on the road, the vibration will be so dissonant because our thought vibration will be so much love and light and compassion. It'll be so close to the divine that anything base just won't touch us and won't come near us, because the law of resonance now is getting really strong. The law of resonance is taken over, like. So dissonant things will vibrate out of our reality, and the only time that you'll collide with that other reality is if you make a few fatal errors and some bad choices and some bad lifestyle choices in your day. You know, you'll notice that yourself, like if you had a very bad breakfast, like, you know, that you might bump into a cross person, like, you know, and you'd have a dirty old encounter in the day as well, like. So those two things are fit to fortuitous. So I suppose as I see my own victories within myself, so I believe that that victory is going to happen externally.
We're now in a situation really, to some extent, whereby when we get out of bed in the morning, we're not even sure if there's going to be a solid square foot of ground that we can put a foot on that won't sink under us. This is unprecedented in human history, as far as I know. I mean, I don't think there's been a moment like this. This is actually the meaning of why I'm here, why we're all here at this moment. This is a rare opportunity for us, because we were living in lies for so long, and now we have an opportunity to perhaps assert the truth against these lies. Sometimes in situations like this, really grave situations, you're in the middle of them and you are the person who has to do something. And you don't know what to do. You have no precedent, you have no example, you have no experience. I would, in good faith, make a decision to do something. And then I would act on that. And this has been my experience. And this is why I think the question of the spiritual dimension of reality is so complex, but so miraculous. Invariably, and in some ways this became more true the more grave the situation was. When I would act in that spirit, making a complete mess of it in my own mind, it would go wrong. In the world, it would fail. But the outcome, in a short time, would be completely miraculous, because it would have brought in new elements that I hadn't even dreamed of. That kind of is, to me, what faith really is understanding that, you know, we're not in control. We must take action. It's not that we just take our not in controlness to mean, well, we do nothing. No. You have to act. That we, in our ham-fisted, incompetent, ineffectual way, will blunder in. Not blunder in the sense that we don't think about it. We do. We reflect, we talk, we take advice. But then we trust that our best effort will be enough to effect the change that is necessary. And in my experience, that always happens. I don't mean it sometimes happens, it always happens. And I think that it will happen in this situation, even though the circumstances that face us appear to be impossible. They're not impossible. They're only impossible for me. I will be the one acting, but I will not be the one in control. Action is the magic word.